Great. So as I said, thank you for joining. And just to explain a little bit more about the F-List project that we're delivering, which is sponsored, well, funded through Youth Music and thankfully Chartmetric as well. It's a small project which is looking to engage both artists in Leeds and Birmingham. We were lucky enough to have loads of great applicants, but we selected 6 musicians from each city, and we've been working with them since February, I believe, to deliver skill like training and give them an opportunity to work with each other. I can see Elle is here and she's part of the program, which is great. The training has been delivered online. They've had sessions in person and with local industry as well. So we were really looking to kind of bring together a world of both peer learning and networking and also upskilling. Mimi has been part of it as well, leading the Leeds group. And it's been a really successful program that's coming to an end, but won't finish because these networks kind of last forever. They exist and will continue to support each other and hopefully lead to future collaborations and opportunities for the artists as well. And yeah, as I said, it's been funded by Chartmetric partly as well. Michelle, hi, thanks for joining us.
Hey Jess, good to see you. Good to see everyone.
And yeah, so I guess we'll just jump into it, if that's okay. And find out a little bit more about how everyone can use their analytics and how they can use Chartmetric in order to, really advance their career and understand how to do these things more accurately.
Okay.
Yeah, should I just hand over to you? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's cool. Let me just make sure. Okay, yeah, I can share my screen. All right. I will share my screen very quickly. I'll just intro Chartmetric briefly, just so we're all on the same page. But basically Chartmetric is, and thank you Jess and Vic for creating such a great community. Chartmetric is a music analytics platform, basically. It's a platform that collects social media and streaming data into one place to make it easier for, primarily started off as for music industry professionals, but it's sort of grown to really anyone who's interested in music and interested in developing their music to understand more about their music, who it's connecting with, where they are, what kind of person they are, and how you as an artist or on the artist team can further engage or further develop that connection between the artist and their music and the listener, the fan, whatever you want to call them. There are a lot of different terms these days, but essentially the audience who's interested in your art. That's the idea behind the platform. And I will just share my screen now and show it and basically go over parts of the platform that I think are most useful that I've seen. I work in business development in Chartmetric. So basically I go around talking to all of our clients, making sure that everything runs the way it should, that everybody's happy, but also that's where I hear what people use it for, and happy to share that here too. And it really runs the gamut from really self-releasing independent artists all the way over to major label artists and everyone in between. As you will see when I share my screen, we do primarily focus on artists at the moment. So we don't have as much data on like songwriters and producers. And that is also just because these individuals tend not to be as public facing as artists do. And so there is less information for us to gather. However, there have been discussions about trying to create profiles for them. Just because they're behind the record doesn't mean they're not seen, but in terms of gathering data and information, it's just a little more difficult when we don't have as much to draw from. As you will also see, Chartmetric only collects public data because anyone can have a subscription to the platform, and we also I mean, of course, for legal purposes, but also just, ethically. The idea is not to expose anybody through information. It's to gather information in one place to make it easier to make better decisions. That's really the idea behind this. So I'll share my screen. Right one. Oops. There we go. Okay, so this is Chartmetric, like when you log in the first time. This is my account, which is why there is a lot going on it already. Usually if you log in the first time, it would be blank. And you need to start sort of poking around on the platform, and then you'll see things generate. The main menu bar is at the top. The dashboard is what you usually see when you log in. It's basically curated for you. Once you start to poke around on platform, you can follow artists that you're interested in, whether that's yourself, your roster, or other artists or similar, or competitors, depending on how you view them. And similarly for tracks, for playlists, albums, and curators, you can basically, each of those has its own individual profile on the platform where you can dig into more information, and you'll be able to see all of that. And the dashboard is just for you to be able to keep track. If you wanted to get like reports, like I get daily email reports about the platform, then you would be able to sort of toggle that and be able to see that here as well. Yes, and please tell me if I'm talking too fast, because I will probably do that. There's a lot to go through, and I want to cover as much as possible. I'm just going to move. So I'm going to basically move along mostly the menu bar at the top. This is where you'll see what we've done is basically section each. Yes, please feel free to ask questions along the way in the chat, or if you want to interrupt me, that is totally fine as well. So yeah, you see that we basically sectioned off all the information in our database into these more recognizable categories. So charts, artists, playlists, and so on and so forth. And the charts you're probably very familiar with already, so I'm not going to spend too long here, but the idea is basically that we pull in charts from all these platforms on the side. So that covers most of the global streaming platforms that you're already familiar with, and also a few that you may be less familiar with because they are more regional. So Line is a Japanese streaming platform, Melon is Korean, Tencent, QQ, and NetEase are all Chinese platforms. We are also in the middle of onboarding new data from Angami, which is the Middle Eastern streaming platform and the primary streaming platform for that region. So we also try to add more platforms in as they become relevant. Pandora is only available in North America, although you can still distribute your music on any of these platforms, right? So you can still see the charts for these. And yeah, this is what you're used to seeing probably, the Spotify charts. Whatever we are able to show is whatever we are able to get. Sometimes the platforms have different restrictions on like how much information they allow to be shared off of their own platform. They will want to retain stuff for their native platform so that they can also draw people to their platform, which makes sense. We just try to display as much as possible in one place because fully aware that it is quite cumbersome to go to 20 different pages to try to find your information and then try to piece it together in your head. So that's the idea of putting it together here. And there are often either daily or weekly charts, and then also either global or broken down by market. So usually you'll see the UK as one whole market, and then you'll be able to see sort of who's charting there, as well as at the top. So we pull in all the information together and basically present it to you in a way that's hopefully more organized. And then sometimes we will add in additional features like the summary at the top to make it easier to understand what's going on. So if you didn't want to parse through the whole chart yourself, then you can basically look at the top and see which label sort of has the most real estate on the chart, which artist does, Olivia Rodrigo, which genre, pop, not very surprising, and so on and so forth. You can see other breakdowns like that. You can usually also click on sections or different parts or bars or lines that are on Chartmetric, and often something will, like a modal like this, will pop out and give you basically more detail. It's just us trying to organize everything so that it's not too overwhelming when you look at it. But then when you do need more granular information, then you usually can find that as well. So that's the idea there. Some charts, some information we are able to get that isn't available elsewhere because we have direct partnerships as well. So for example, the TikTok charts we get directly from TikTok, and then you can see here, for example, what's which tracks are performing well as sounds right now in the UK. So a lot of these are rap songs. That's odd. There are a couple of Chinese ones popping up there. Yeah, but you will see this basically. And then you can sort of go through and identify if you were basically interested. The charts are usually helpful for like overall trends to understand like what is of interest right now to the listeners, usually from the particular market. So in this case, the UK. But yeah, this here. That's how that works. And then the artist page. So the artist page gets used a lot. Basically, this is where you can see all of the 9.5 million artists that we're tracking. This number goes up all the time. There are more and more artist profiles being created all the time. In reality, probably only about 1 million or slightly over 1 million of those are really truly active. A lot of these profiles are duplicate profiles, or were created once and used once and sort of never again. And not everyone who releases music wants to make a full-on career out of it as well. And so there will be tons of different types of profiles. When we refer to profiles, we usually are looking for like active ones of people who are actively developing a career out of their music. And so usually I'd say it's about 1 million of those. But you can see all 9.5 million here. And then there are always filters for all of these pages. There are filters at the top or at the side, usually either above or to the left, where you can go through and filter down. So for example, if I wanted to, a lot of A&Rs use this to basically look for developing artists. So if you wanted to see artists who are from the UK, then you shift that first. There are also all sorts of categories where you can adjust for depending on what you're looking for. And I would go here to find everyone who's, narrow this down to everyone who's had their first release in the last 2 years, because I would be looking for newer developing talent. And then that brings you down already to about 20,000 artists, which is a lot more manageable than 9.5 million. 20,000 artists is still quite a lot. It's still quite a lot to go through. So then what I would do here is I would add a few more filters. Like I would look really for artists who are developing on Spotify. So I would shift the Spotify popularity index, which there is Spotify's own sort of ranking system, if you will, way of ranking how well artists are doing in terms of Spotify numbers only on Spotify. We don't calculate that, so we don't know what goes into it, but we do know that it's out of 100. There's usually only one artist at 100 at any given time. I believe at the moment it's Taylor Swift. It usually bounces between her and like Bad Bunny or something like that. And then every other artist falls down the scale from 100 all the way down to 0, as you can see here. most artists will fall around 0 to 5, I think that is, or so. And that's, again, because, as I mentioned, the vast majority of these 9.5 million artists are not really active. And so that would mostly fall here. And then you get the rest falling across this spectrum, the scale. And then what we found is that anyone who's below 30 hasn't quite made enough moves yet to be showing developing growth, but it could be getting there. Whereas everyone above 60 you've heard of before, like Ed Sheeran or Doja Cat or Stormzy or somebody like that. So then if you were an A&R and you're looking for like a developing artist, then you'd be looking between 30 and 60, which is why I've narrowed it down to this. And then that took me from about 20,000 to 109 artists. That's actually more manageable. That's more reasonable than an A&R would basically go through and then listen to all of these artists and see. And then there's also other information, like if these artists are signed already, so you can see that quite a few of them were already signed to a major or signed to like a independent label. So what you could also then do is filter by associated labels if you wanted to just find those artists who are not signed to any of these categories. That brings you to 70. And then this is really those developing artists who are growing from the UK, who are not signed to anybody. I don't want to offend anybody, but like no one necessarily like super notable at the moment. You're not signed to like a major label, or you might be with a smaller label, but sort of still potentially up for any new opportunity that might come your way that could help you develop further in your career. That would be this group of 70 artists. So yeah, that's how this works. So it's
Sorry, just quickly, that's so interesting. Lizzie Birchie is on there. She was like the last program that's very similar to
oh
this.
okay, cool.
She's
Well,
killing it. Look at that. That's amazing.
yeah,
Anyway.
that's awesome, because on this list then she's like 7th basically, which is really high up as well, and definitely someone that if I was an A&R, I'd at least check out the top 10 basically. So
Incredible.
yeah. So, and the reason I explain this is also because if you're not an A&R, but if you're an artist, I think this is also good to know, because this is basically how A&Rs use the platform. So then you can understand what they're looking for as well. Yeah, because at least this is the way I tell them to use the platform. So this and I know many of them do. Yeah, and then so of course they're all the numbers to the right, and it does get very overwhelming, but it's because every platform has its own bunch of numbers, whether that's how many playlists you're on, how many listeners do you have, how many subscribers are on YouTube, how many views, so on and so forth, Instagram, TikTok, basically every platform, you name it, we're probably tracking it, including things like Shazam, which can actually be quite helpful in terms of understanding, are people really engaging? Are they showing that they like your music by interacting with it, by pressing like a Shazam button, which can sometimes be more helpful information than did they follow you? Yes, but then are they going to do anything? Unsure. So that's why we add additional metrics where we find that they are useful. Wikipedia views as well. But you will notice, of course, many of these artists are just starting out or are developing and may not have like a Wikipedia yet, which is why this section is blank. However, if there is ever anything on the platform that you're not sure about, like why is it blank? Maybe it looks like a bug, maybe it's intentional. If you're not sure, just always feel free to, the little chat button should always be in the bottom right corner, and just feel free to send us a message, and we usually reply pretty quickly, and can at least help explain what's happening if there is something that is missing, or if it's something that we can fix for you as well, or show you how to fix on your end as well. But yeah, that is more or less how this works, and you can you can save your filters if you go back to them on a regular basis. You can customize what you're seeing. So if all of that was too much, then you can just change it so that you don't need to see all of these columns. It really is up to you. And the reason why there's so many options, which I know can also be overwhelming itself, but the reason it's there is because there are a lot of different roles in the industry. There are a lot of different people who are interested in music, and so they all have their own interests as well. And so we try to make it broad, but really focus in on music. So as you can see here, and then just so you can see quickly, same sort of format for the playlist. And again, you can filter through depending on what you're interested in. If you were looking for playlists to pitch to, you could filter down to the genre that you work with. So I work with a couple R&B artists right now, so I'd filter to that. You will notice a lot of playlists do cross genres. It's pretty common now, but you can still narrow it down further by looking for like particular kinds of playlists with let's say I wanted to find those with a smaller following. So 10 to 100,000, still fairly aspirational of a following, but smaller than like a huge editorial. So it's something that I could probably work with for my artists. And then yeah, in total we track 18 million playlists, but this brings that down to 12,000. Yeah, the numbers only get bigger in terms of how many playlists and such that we track, but that's what the filters are for, to bring it down to a more manageable group. 12,000 playlists to go through is still quite a lot, but I can parse it down further from here, again, to help narrow things down, and look for, not every playlist will want to be pitched to, not every curator takes requests, and it's about trying to find those who are open to that and don't pay. Find curators who are really just open to curating the music. That's fine. That's great. Whereas yeah, paying tends to be very obvious these days and not as helpful. So this is to find those. We don't necessarily have all of their contact information. That would be confidential because it's their direct information, but often we try to include their socials so that you can reach out that way, or at the very least you can find playlists that appear to be active. You can check that. That's what this 28-day change and 28-day ad is for. If you hover over the little info icon, you can see that provides insight into how often tracks get added to the playlist. So how active is the curator in updating the playlist? So the higher the percentage, the more active the playlist is. And then so which playlists are still moving, because a lot of them do tend to become stagnant. Curators drop off, they don't do this anymore, and then you might just be reaching out blindly. So then you can narrow this down to, you can just resort it. These are all the playlists that have been changed in the last month, basically, that have had rotation. And then you can go through and find those. Even if we, like I said, if we don't have the contact information, at least you have like the curator's name, the playlist name, and you can try to find them on Google or something like that. It takes a little more sleuthing, but it's a place to start at the very least. And you can go into the, let's see, something like this, maybe. You can go into the playlist and see more stats about it. So when a track's usually added on a Friday, so don't pitch to them on a Friday, pitch to them on like a Monday or Tuesday earlier in the week, when they are more likely to be accepting pitches and open to receiving messages. By the time it hits Thursday or Friday, they probably have decided what they're going to curate for the week, and they won't be looking at anything anymore. Similarly, tracks usually removed on Saturday, Sunday, so this sort of matches up. This has developed a pretty good followership over time, so it doesn't look dodgy or anything. Sometimes you'll see them go up and down, and pay for followers and things like that. You can also sort of assess what kind of music. Some curators tend to like to only put new music on their playlists, and so if you send them anything that's older, they basically just won't reply or even listen to it. So you can see here, most of the tracks are a little older, so it seems pretty open. You also can see how long tracks last in this playlist. It depends on what you're looking for. Sometimes you may or may not think it's worth it, because if a track only lasts in the playlist for a week, then the turnover is pretty high. And if you spend that much time pitching and trying to get onto it, is it worth it or not? It's up to you. And some other playlists, you'll see that they don't shift as often, but they have repeat listenership for a longer period of time, which could benefit you in a different way instead. So this is where you can see that sort of information, as well as what kind of tracks get put into this playlist. So this playlist has sort of a mix of newer as well as more popular mainstream tracks. So it seems like I said, it's fairly open, and then it's pop, electronic, rock, dance type of songs and artists, as well as, and then you can just see some additional information here as well, record label breakdown, all of that sort of stuff. So it could be useful for research as much as it can be for yourself as an artist, and you can go through and see that. But yeah, so that's like a sort of easy way to start to use the playlist section of Chartmetric to identify playlists to pitch to that you might not have known about yet. There are a lot of playlists out there, and there are a lot more being created all the time, and a lot that also go stagnant all the time. So it's a constant cycle, but this is one way to sort of parse through. I did also want to show an artist profile too, because that's one of the other most used parts of the platform. I'm just going to show Ray's because I think a lot of people know her story by now. Basically, this is an artist page. The playlist page, as you saw, sort of looks similar. It has like an overview, and then it goes into like the stats section on the menu bar on the left. There are similar pages for like tracks. They also look the same. So it really just depends what you want to look at. But I'm going to focus on an artist page because these get used the most. You can see sort of what sort of career stage you're at. She's shot up to superstar, as she should now. What kind of momentum she's having, steady. I think she just finished touring, so that makes sense. And then what kind of social media network you have is established, makes sense for her too. I usually check the data sources section here, just to make sure everything is connected. You can also check, you can click on the logo, and it will actually go out to the respective link just to make sure it's the right one. You can also know that it's connected because the logos are all lit up. Anything that's not connected will be grayed out and needs to be. If you want to, then you can help to update the data sources here. And we do verify them as well. So if we don't get to it first, please feel free to. And again, if you're ever not sure, you can just send it to us here and let us know. We can help you do it for you.
Sorry, I just wanted to draw attention to one really important thing, or say something that there's so great that you have the contact information. Obviously, it's not context, but it can be so useful. This is something that, you know, a lot of the participants have talked about, not being able to find out who actually is working with who. And it's right there. I didn't realize you did that. That's super useful.
Yeah, we do have this. We pulled it in a lot from Facebook at the beginning, and then now we sort of leave it open because some people have said they like don't want their contact information there. Some people do. So you won't see it for everyone. It's more of a case of if someone has decided to put it in, it will be there, and it is open to being updated if you need it to be. So this is basically all of her booking agents across different territories. There is also a press contact and manager info that has not been shared. And then there's just her label, which is human resources. Yeah, I've seen some artists fill it out because they want to be contacted. Others have asked us to remove information because they don't want to. But if you would like to, that's the one that we are a little more we let people update because we don't want to get anything wrong. But yeah, you can always put that in here. There are a lot of comparison features on the platform as well, where you can sort of see like which one of your tracks is doing the best. So right now for Ray, Prada is her best performing track because that just went viral on TikTok. It used to be Escapism, but now Prada has overtaken that actually, even in terms of playlisting on Spotify. So you can really see the translation from TikTok over to Spotify as well. And that's quite cool to see here. There are also all these other sections. I know people have screenshotted. By the way, do feel free to screenshot. You can usually like download data from the platform on the premium version, but even if not, you can just screenshot sections that you might want. I know people who have used these for like funding applications, for visa applications, anywhere that you sort of just need numbers to like support whatever you are trying to get across. This is a good place to get those. So feel free to use these as you need to. And then there's also just a bunch of other overall information here as well. Yeah, when you're mentioned in the press, it should show up here. What other artists fans also like. Again, so a lot of the comparison tools on the platform are not necessarily for comparison in terms of like competition, although that's up to you. But it's usually comparison to find other similar artists or artists that you aspire to be like and see how they did what they did and whether you can basically learn from some of that. That's really the idea here. So speaking of, you can see we've been making some, we constantly update the platform to improve it and to keep up with the industry. So you might see this was updated yesterday, that this is a new look. You can switch it to the original one if you prefer that, but this is the new one. You can see your whole catalog here. You can compare a catalog and sort of see again which tracks are performing the best if you weren't already aware, or maybe a track is starting to do well. So I've heard this from a lot of people. They notice a track is starting to do well because the numbers are starting to run, and then they can put some marketing behind that or just let people know, right? Because people tend to like to jump on trends of things that are doing well. So this is also a good way to like sort of track that. You may also have different versions of the same track, like Ray's got sped up versions of Escapism, so you want to see which one's doing better. Or if you've had a track on Colors, but that you've also released yourself and you want to see which one is doing better as well. You can also see that sort of thing on here. So the stats section, the social and streaming stats, is probably one of the most popular parts of the platform. And you can basically see here how you're progressing over time. So everything for her has been fairly linear because she's had a really like rocketing start to her career, which is brilliant. I'm going to switch to the engagement. What we've done is we split the numbers into fan base and into engagement. Fan base numbers tend to be like followers and subscribers, anything where people like want to get an update on you, so they'll click follow and then they'll get updates. That's a loyal fan or a loyal listener who wants to basically know more about you as an artist. And then there are more of engagement numbers, which you see here, which are more about like immediate engagement and interaction. Are people engaging with you right now? Are they in the social conversation with you right now? Are you doing what you need to do as well to get them to engage with you, to be interested in you, to want to find out more about you? This is that section instead. And you can see here basically how things progress. I know her numbers are really big. You can sort of ignore those. What I want to show is the trend lines. And so for her, this is like when things started to take off on TikTok, and you can see the lines moving across all the graphs, because it was very across platform, the effect. And then it just continued to take off from there because, like I said, she now has that other track that I believe was remixed and is now taking off on TikTok as well. And so that's why that's shooting up. And it's normal for things to go up and down in terms of numbers. What's more important is to look at the trend overall. And so, yes, this went up and then down and back up, but then overall it's gone up from basically this point to here. And that's a pretty good line of best fit to follow along. The numbers are also really helpful. The numbers along the that are annotated along the line basically show you events that happened at those points in the year to see what had the most effect. So that's why you can hover over those, and then it shows you like a breakdown of like everything that happened at that point in time as well. And this is a zoomed out graph as well. If you zoom in, it will break it down further for you so that you can actually see specifically, okay, there was this release and then this sank on Love Island, and then she did a show here, and then she's been busy basically. But that is also why she's gained so much traction, right? When things start to take off, everything keeps rolling, hopefully. So yeah, that is, you can see here as well, like what, might have done better. Looks like she was on Good Morning America as a TV, like a live TV appearance, which might have helped things over her sort of like regularly scheduled program, I suppose, which is still quite busy. But this seems to be, stands out from the rest. But that was a live TV appearance, and also over in the US, so it's a different market too. But yeah, you can see all that here. So there's a lot to play around with, but I think this section is very useful to basically get an idea across all the different platforms, and also see all the different, like, we call them events basically, but all the different like releases, concerts, like TV appearances, posts on social media, like all of the things that have the most effect overall. And of course, there are things that we won't be able to capture, but that that you did. So marketing campaigns, press pushes, radio pushes as well. Like radio actually will show up in airplay instead, but all of these will have an effect on your career. And so you want to figure out what has the most impact, and you can do that here. There's also the audience section. This is the other most used part of the platform, in addition to the stats and the playlists. So just go over this quickly too. Basically here is where you can see like where your audience is located. And the reason this is a popular part of the platform is because every artist now is basically a global artist. If you're distributing your music digitally, it can be heard by anyone who has access to a digital device that can stream music, which is pretty much anywhere in the world. So you're no longer necessarily restricted by physical distribution in terms of where you can get heard. It really is a sort of global landscape, and you can see that here as well. So she has a very diverse fan base, which is great because that just opens up more potential. It's something that labels tend to look for a little more now. Some labels are still very focused locally, and that's fine. And if that's what you want to do, then go for that. Other labels are a little more outward looking, and if that's the direction you want to go in, then you know basically who you want to sign with if you get to that point. So yeah, that's why it's good to get an understanding of this. This is also helpful for tour planning, that if you are going to go on the road and you want to make sure that when you hit those cities that you can sell tickets. If you have 1,000 listeners in London, that doesn't necessarily mean you'll sell 1,000 tickets, but you have a good chance of selling, let's say, 100 or 200. And so in moderation as well, be aware that a lot of listeners will maybe just passive listeners, like playlisters or background music type of people, but you will have always that core section of your fan base who will want to show up for you. And it's about understanding who they are and then where they are as well. And this can tell you sort of where they are and help you plan accordingly so that you book the right venues too, and then build up from there. So that's what this is really good for too. And then you can also see in terms of just like social media, like Instagram and a little bit on YouTube, you'll see that this spread looks quite different, aside from London being at the top for these two. But then here it's Jakarta and KL come before London. And that's also just because these two cities have much bigger populations than London does, definitely Jakarta. But that's why they'll overtake. But still, you can see this is a much more international collection than these two, although these are also quite spread out. And it just really depends on understanding also, like each platform has its own native audience. So YouTube tends to have a much more global audience because YouTube is owned by Google and it is used everywhere and it's free and it's been like that way for a long time. Instagram, despite being available everywhere, doesn't mean everybody uses it. And so that will reflect in the type of audience you see. And then same for Spotify. It's everywhere or in most markets now, but not necessarily used by everyone in those markets, and also more prominent in some markets than others. And you'll see that reflected as well. It's just good to know the context when you're also looking at the figures as well. Also in these platform specific sections at the bottom, for TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, you can see more information about your audience in terms of demographics, which I think is also very helpful. So here you can see gender breakdown, age breakdown as well. We do get this data from a third-party platform at the moment, which is why I know this is not the most inclusive gender breakdown, but this is what we have available from them at the moment. And hopefully that will change in the future. And then those cities that you saw in the audience section just now here are similarly reflected here. It's just to, again, have a more cohesive section where you can focus in, for example, on Instagram. Same down here. So like this, you can use for content strategy. I've done this a few times for artists and it always works out quite well because basically this section tells you what people like seeing from you because these are your most liked posts. Whatever people like seeing, post more.
You have this for every artist that has the Instagram linked, so like even much more entry-level artists, so anybody could plug in and see, oh, this is what most people are enjoying. Like you could, because you always have a vague idea, I guess, but like this is really clear.
Yeah. And if it's not showing, usually at least the artist has about 1,000 followers, then we can show this. Sometimes we're able to push it through for artists with less followers, but also we need data to show, do some analysis. And yes, I think you usually do have an idea. Most of the artists I've worked with say they do, but knowing and seeing it on the page sometimes helps to spark ideas and also just to realize that, oh, people do actually like seeing me at shows. I should post more. I should make sure that when I do gigs that I film content or I have a photographer there so that I can post more about that after.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost not like the top 3 or 4 most interesting. It's like almost the few after that of like, oh, I hadn't realized that was actually one of my most, and you can see with hers, it's quite the type changes really quickly from like being these professional shots or very like clean shots to being more fun and personal.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this gives a really good insight into like sort of what part of your image as an artist that you are currently presenting that people connect with the most. And I always tell artists as well, it's not that you can't post other things. This is just a good idea. This is just a good way to get a really good idea of what people are most interested in. That will help you build more engagement and like more of a fan base now. And then you can start to post other things in and include other things. It's not an end all be all. It's just more insight into what you could do. Cool. Yeah, and so this sort of breakdown is available for TikTok as well. For you could do the same sort of thing if you weren't sure like what kind of content was resonating, then you can take a look here. And same with the sounds and all of that. So there's quite a lot to go through. I just wanted to point out this engagement rate here as well. The engagement rate is quite useful because so I've mentioned a few times about like this is about building your digital profile, usually using Chartmetric. But of course, you also want to make sure that you're able to engage with people offline, that they show up to your shows, that they buy your merch, because that's also where a lot of money is made, and that you are also just genuinely developing like a real connection, right? Not just like an online one. And the engagement rate can help with that because it basically just tells you how many of your followers are actually engaging with you through the vehicle of likes. So we basically measure how many of your followers are actually liking on average your posts or your videos or whatever the medium is on that platform. And that gives you a better idea of like, okay, would they really show up for you, basically is what I'm trying to say. And in terms of what's a good engagement rate, any engagement rate that's double digits is already amazing. So 20 is like skyrocketed, but not surprising because TikTok is really the platform that helped Ray launch. You can see on Instagram she's at 6%, which is also actually still quite good. Anything over 5 is usually quite good, and then anything in double digits is amazing. You don't see that all the time. If you're at 3 to 5, you're in the right direction. If you're at 0 to 3, you got to do some work. So yeah, that's basically how I would break it down. But it's always been a really good one, I think, and one that's not understood well enough, but is actually, I think, just a really good metric to follow. So there's that too. Yeah, there's all sorts of different sections on here though. Like there's radio airplay that you can see here. I know still very prominent in the UK, and we do track quite a few of the British radio stations. So you can see here. Yeah, these are all.
Oh, that's so useful to be able to see. Can you, yeah, see what radio stations even exist? There's so
Yeah.
much, yeah, it's sometimes it's really hard to know. So yeah, it can be really useful.
Yeah, we don't track every radio station worldwide because there are so many. We do track 3,000 at the moment, and the way that we select those is that we try to track the biggest stations in each market, but also the most influential stations in each market, because sometimes the most influential ones are not the big ones, but those are the ones that you still want to get on because they can help to like propel you. And so we do that through a combination of research and industry contacts. And so I usually update it. So yeah, there are a lot of stations. But this is a good way to also find out about notable stations that you should probably know about as well, especially if in the UK like radio is still such a big thing, then it's good to have a better understanding of that as well. But yeah, around the world too, the US is still big on radio. Australia is still very big on radio as well. You can see all of that popping up here too.
And
So-
just quickly, I know that there's a difference between the metrics you can see between an artist plan and a premium plan. What are the metrics that you can see on the artist plan?
Yeah, good question. The artist plan, basically you can see pretty much everything I've been showing. I've been showing the premium plan, sorry, I forgot to mention that. But on the artist plan, you can basically see everything I've just shown is just for one artist. It's just for the artist that you subscribe to. Whereas on the premium plan, you can see all of the artists, which is why you also have all of these filters. I believe on the artist plan, the filters might not be so readily available just because it's mainly honing in on a single artist. Yeah. but definitely just now everything on here should be
It says on the website basic data access on millions of artists. Does that mean like you could possibly, but you have to select one?
Oh, it means you have full data for one artist and then standard data for all the rest.
And
So
what's the standard data?
standard data is just usually just restricted to, I believe it's the last 7 days of data, whereas the subscribed artists, you get all of the historical data.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
I had one other question earlier about the playlist that I put in the chat. Can you search like for a specific artist? Like, does this artist appear on these playlists? Like, or what playlist, sorry, does this artist appear on, or have they appeared on?
Yeah. Yes. So what you can do is search for the artist and then go to the playlist section, and then you can see all of the playlists that they've appeared on.
Oh, so you could see that as well for the past 7 days, like for the
this would only for the
artist.
restricted, for the artist one, for your subscribed artist, you can see everything. For the standard basic version, you would just see the last 7 days, so everything else would be grayed out, so you could only see all of the playlists they've been on for the last 7 days.
But that's amazing information around their release or something. You'd be like, okay, in the first week of release, I'm just going to quickly check this artist's page and see what in the first week they got added to playlist wise, because that could be really insightful. Cool, thank you.
Yeah. So on the artist plan, like it's just deep dive, full access for the artist that you choose. But then everyone else, you should be able to see this too. And then we show current playlists and then also past playlists. So if you're removed from a playlist but you wanted to see what it was and you don't remember, you can go to past playlists and see that as well. Cool. Same vice versa. If you wanted to see on a playlist who was on it before or what sort of curation was listed there before as well, you can always just go over to the playlist, and then in the track section, you can see current tracks, which is what you would see if you just went to beast mode on Spotify. But you can also see like a time machine. You can go back. But this is also like a full premium because it gives so much data going back. You can see here we have everything going back to 2017. So. All right. That's mostly relevant for the artist plan. For the premium plan, there you can see all of these other sections at the top. There are reports, there's an A&R section, there are comparison tools, there's all these different things that you can use. But for the artist plan, like I said, it's really deep diving into the one section, the one profile of an artist. Although you can subscribe up to 3 artists on the artist plan. It's just you choose which 1, 2, or 3 you want to deep dive into. Cool. That's pretty much all I had because I know we ran a little over the hour, but it was also a lot. But I just wanted to highlight those bits that I've seen be the most useful.
Yeah, we started late anyway.
Yeah, that's fine.
I totally appreciate that. Thanks. Cool. Does anyone have any questions? I know that there's a lot of data and things to go through there. I hope you can see a little bit how it can be applied to your work, because I think that there's so much information and interesting stuff that you can find out that, we spend a lot of time looking for elsewhere. Just the informational playlists and what radio stations exist, all of this information stuff that I'm constantly directing people to other places to try and find, but this is so much more relevant and searchable. So I didn't realize how wide-ranging it was. Does anyone have any specific questions? Totally understand if you don't. I also understand it's a bit of a different time of day for this kind of presentation. Normally we would try and do it after work or something, so you'd be able to concentrate fully on it, but that's fun too. No. Mimi, go for it. Just unmute, it's no problem.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you. I was just going to say this is just such a powerful piece of SaaS, like software as a service. It's just so interesting. Just out of curiosity, so I'm a classical musician, and I mean, obviously, I've seen a lot of like popular music artists, but I was just wondering how well this would work, either for someone like me who kind of writes their own stuff, or maybe someone like, I don't know, Shekayla Mason, who kind of plays, in a sense, covers, to put it crudely, or plays, you know, the more traditional canon of repertoire.
Yeah, I mean, there are still a lot of classical artists on the platform. Usually I look things up by market. Whenever I look up Austria, like all of their top artists are all but you know, Mozart and everything. So they still come up here too. But let me just flip quickly over to classical, and there will be a lot of crossover. There will be pop artists who are classified as classical as well, which you'll see. Yeah, a lot of, but yeah, their whole Einaudi has been popping up for a while, and also has figured out TikTok, I think, for himself. So it's been popping up there too. But yeah, London, and there will be orchestras too, who will have their repertoire on here. Really, anybody who has a profile on a streaming platform, usually for us, Spotify, Apple Music, or Deezer is what we require, then a profile can be created. And then if they have social media links, we can connect those. If they have other streaming links, we can connect those and then still create the same profile.
Okay, no, cool. That's so interesting. I mean, yeah, again, it's so interesting because, like, I mean, we've got people like Mozart up there, LSO, London Symphony Orchestra, but like they obviously perform multiple, or you've got the artists who perform like multiple versions of that. Do you use like Apple Music Classical at all, or like Adagio, or any of the more kind of catered ones?
No, we haven't, because we haven't actually had any requests for that as far as I know. But yeah, my colleague Chaz actually used to run a classical label and has spoken about Chartmetric at classical conferences, I believe, as well. And I think has managed to convince at least a few of them that it is useful. So yeah, and a lot of them will use it to actually figure out how they can sort of translate their classical music into like a more modern format that will be consumed by people, whether it's connecting it to certain kind of videos or sync opportunities or whatever that might be.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.
Amazing. Vic, go for it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. And it's sort of echoing the remarks from the others. This does so much more than I thought. I mean, I know people who use it and Chartmetric and rate it very highly, but it really does much more than I thought. And I'm just wondering, so you do or individual artists, but do you track information on company level labels or publishing companies as well?
We do, in the sense that it's like here. And so you can sort of reverse it, if you will, because you're basically just looking at a whole roster of artists for a particular label.
Mm-hmm.
We have not built that sort of enterprise capability out yet. That's in the works at the moment. But what people usually do is they just follow their whole roster and then can calculate some numbers themselves from there.
So people who are accessing your service from a particular label will just be tracking all of their artists, no matter how big the label is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the dashboard this is my account, so there's no limit on it. But on the standard full premium version, the dashboard is limited to 50 artists, 50 tracks, 50 albums, 50 playlists, 50 curators at any time. You can switch them out, but it just maxes out at 50. But for those labels who have bigger rosters, we can increase the limit. There's just an additional price on there.
Thank you very much. And I also have to say I love the gender work that you've been doing as well, because I'm a gender music researcher, so so I've really think that's a fantastic project. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, it's good to it's really good to hear that people are using it, because like that's the whole reason I created it. And tried to get them to put it in here so that people start to make use of it as well. So yeah, appreciate it.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, we should stop now so that everyone can get on with their days. Apologies once again for starting it late. As I said, it's a bit of chaotic because I only landed in California yesterday. So I say yesterday, it was like last night. So my timescales are all over the place. And I will go for a nap or something now. So yes, thank you again, Michelle, for both supporting the project and for presenting this today. We had about 30 people sign up, so I'll be sending it out to everybody. Hello, if you're watching it on the recording. And yeah, please feel free to send us in questions. I'll send a feedback form. So if you do have any questions that are specific, I can collate them and send them to Michelle afterwards as well. I completely understand. Cool. Have a great day, everybody. Great evening. And no worries, Nadine. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. See you.